Kate, welcome. Can you hear me? Can you
I
say,
sure
can I
can.
hear? I,
Can you
I
hear
wanted
me?
to, because I've got, yeah, I can. I was wanted to make sure I got your last name correct because it may have shifted since last I saw you. Is that correct?
It has. It's well,
Okay.
two less hard names to spell, but or pronounce. It's Kate Willette Cretsinger. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's a French name, so French spelling.
Yes,
I could
it
see
is.
that. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you once again well, thanks for joining us, and I know we've interacted in the past, but can you tell me and tell the folks a little bit about your background before we get going?
Sure, sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My background is, I guess, the quick and short version would be growing up, I was always on antibiotics. I was always sick. We were not a very wealthy family, so we didn't eat very well. We had, like the normal pasta and, all the sugary stuff. But we didn't eat out as far as fast food goes. Growing up, that, like I said, we were always on antibiotics, my sister and I. And in my mid 20s is when I really started really noticing the problems that I was having with waking up with bloody noses, lots of migraines, and it was pretty much, probably 4 or 5 times a week is what I was dealing with that. Didn't do much with looking into it. I would go get MRIs. They told me it was basically all in my head. Nothing was wrong with me. And so being a mom, a single mom of two, I just kind of just sucked it up and said, okay, this is how life was going to be for a little while. And then I started falling into nutrition when I went to school for exercise science. Absolutely fell in love with nutrition. And that's when I kind of started looking at eating a little cleaner. Have always been like a vegetarian my whole life. And I kind of really at that point realized carbohydrates were not good for me. And most vegans, as we know, eat a lot of carbohydrates, and vegetarians. So I decided to phase those out and only eat rice occasionally. And then as I got older, things started getting worse. My hair was falling out, joint pain, aches and pains, bloating, gas, all that normal stuff. But particularly around that time of the month, our cycle as a woman, we can't not talk about this, but it was very, I was angry a lot. I had a lot of angry thoughts, and that wasn't like me to be that way. And so I started to dive a little bit more into that. And that's when I went, it was probably about 8 years ago, I did vegetarian keto. And I called myself a vegetarian because maybe 3 or 4 times a year I would have some meat. And it was usually when I felt like my body was craving it at that time. And it was usually like hamburger. And it had to be cooked all the way. I couldn't even have it pink. I just didn't like the texture. For me, it wasn't an ethical thing. It was just the texture of meat that I did not like. So moving forward, I became a nutrition coach, and I saw a lot of my clients were missing some things. And so I started digging a little deeper into the oxalates and the lectins and all that. And that's when I came across your work, Dr. Sean, and I was like, oh, carnivore, interesting. So I put a couple of my clients on that, and they miraculously healed. And I said, okay, well, there's got to be something that's, and I normally don't put my clients on something I haven't tried. So exactly a year ago today, I tried it, and I thought I was healed. I thought I was healthy, and boy, was I wrong. A couple of things really were very prominent right in the beginning. I still had bloating. I didn't realize it. So that went away. My gums stopped bleeding. My mood swings have changed. My monthly cycles, I don't have those nasty thoughts anymore. So it's been quite a journey. And it's interesting, the first 2 weeks, I noticed a huge difference. But as the year went on, I started noticing some other things that we've become, we think as people are normal, and they're not normal. It's our body talking to us. So it's been a great journey.
Yeah, that's a common sort of theme that people, they think they're healthy and then they realize maybe they weren't as healthy as they thought they are because by maybe even outward appearances and maybe typical measurements relative to the normal population, you may be doing better, but it really is. It's really something that has to be experienced, and it's hard just to describe to other people because there's obviously so much doubt and skepticism. And then you kind of, once you experience that, it's hard to go back. And many people do. They come back and then they realize, well, I really don't feel very good, and then they come back here again. So it's kind of interesting to see. The other thing that you brought up on was, the sort of the anger and we can't say this for sure, but there are studies in the literature that talk about people with particularly maybe even low cholesterol having issues with violence, anger. We see, violent criminals have lower cholesterol than nonviolent criminals in many cases. People that, actually either have suicidal ideation or even commit suicide are found to have low cholesterol. So, and obviously, with the demonization of cholesterol, particularly serum cholesterol, over the last 5-6 decades, maybe some of that can be, maybe some of the mental health issues we see might have something to do with that. I mean, I know that's
I would have to agree with you on
statement.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to. My cholesterol, actually, when we looked at mine, because I did mine before I did Carnivore, and I haven't done it since, which I really need to go back and do. But my cholesterol, my LDL was below 70, and my HDL was like 90. It was way above, the range of the 40 to 80. So it was kind of, in my triglycerides were probably about this, they were about 70. It was about the same. So yeah, it was interesting that my LDLs were that low, and that's what was going on. I'd venture to say that they've definitely gone up since I've been doing this, which I think is great.
I wouldn't be surprised if they have. I mean, that seems to be pretty common, and quite. Yeah, I mean, you would probably be a cardiologist's dream with those numbers. Oh my God, you're so lucky, blah 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 blah. But then you've got this other thing called quality of life, and which some people actually value quality of life, and just kind of walking around eating low fat cardboard all the time might not be considered quality of life for a lot of people. So tell us about some of the, you kind of alluded to other things that have kind of, you've seen since then that have kind of developed. What kind of other things are you talking about?
Yeah, so one of the big things when you go keto, as you know, is we get a lot of mental clarity. And I had mental clarity, but my memory wasn't that great. I don't know if that's coming across right. It happened when it was probably, I want to say about a month in. I was like, wow, I can feel more mental clarity. And I thought that it was a big switch when I went to keto vegetarian, like the mental clarity that I got by adding more fats. And when I came over this to Carnivore, I was like, wow, I can't believe I even have that much more mental clarity. And the memory has become that much, stronger for me. And I'm able to recall a lot of things a lot longer. And it's funny because the longer I do this, the more of my memory just keeps getting better and better. So I think that in itself was huge for me because of what I do for work, first and foremost. Another one was definitely the gums bleeding. My gums were bleeding ever since I was a teenager. And it wasn't like, just a soft blood. Like when I would floss my teeth, it was like someone punched me in the face. I mean, it was so bloody. And my dentist kept telling me, you just need to floss more. And right up until I went Carnivore, I was flossing my teeth 5 times a day, even though I was only eating twice a day. I was like, how much more can I floss my teeth? And it would still bleed. 2 weeks into Carnivore, it went away. And that to me was an eye opener. I was like, because we tend to, and the work of Weston Price even says, that is the telltale sign of our health, our cardiovascular health, is our gums. And, it was such a concern for me, even at the age of 13, when I was younger and it was bleeding. I was like, wow, this is crazy that it would be bleeding that much. And I was really concerned at that young age. And my whole life, no one would have any answers for me. So now it's gone. So that was huge. And then we can't talk about Carnivore without talking about bowel movements. Those are normal and regular now too. So that has normalized. So those are I feel are the biggest ones. But definitely the mood swings were people realized, my family realized they knew when things were coming because of how I would react, which was sad that they picked up on that. But I don't have that anymore, which is great. You're not tied to that stuff anymore, and you're not labeled as that kind of person. So that was really, really eye-opening for me.
Yeah, it's kind of nice that you not only you feel more balanced, but the people around you are probably a little more pleasant,
Yes.
too, as well, because they're not, they're not having to deal with
Absolutely.
people they can't predict what's going on. Yeah, the
Yeah.
funny thing is, with the bleeding gums, because people will, people that don't really know or understand will say, well, you're going to get scurvy with carnivore diet, and then one of the thoughts around scurvy is, you end up with bleeding gums and so on and so forth. But it actually kind of the opposite seems to happen. And dental
Yeah.
health, which is, somebody referenced Weston A. Price in the chat, but dental health has always been a pretty good proxy for overall health. And I think any diet in which your teeth start to rot out or fall apart or degenerate, or the gums start to recede significantly, is a diet that's probably problematic for people.
Yeah.
And then, the bowel stuff, again, that's the other thing. The misconception is, oh, you're never going to go to the bathroom again. And it's just the sort of disinformation that's out there is just kind of crazy. Now, fairly fit, and you can see just
Uh-huh.
looking at you that you got some good muscle on your frame, which I think is wonderful to see. Talk about a little bit how diet has impacted maybe your training, because I know you train, and you're I think inspirational to a lot of women out there. So talk a little bit about how that is going.
Yeah, I've always been an athletic person, and so I've always been into anything you can think of. I do a lot of stuff. So rock climbing, ice climbing, CrossFit. I did um, biking, mountain biking, road biking, all of that. I used to be a runner. I don't do that anymore. I've been with all this carnivore stuff. I've kind of started being a little more gentler to my body and realized there was a lot of things I was running from. So I started honing in on things that really made me feel good and made me made me feel healthy. And a lot of that was doing the weight training. And that weight training, I realized that within the first couple of months, I gained 20 pounds on my PRs, not like 5 pounds like you would normally see. It was 20-pound PRs when I first started doing carnivore, which was crazy. And not only that, my body fat was going down and my lean muscle mass was going up. So that was really awesome to see. So my performance was going through the roof. It still is. I just did a huge there's that misconception out there that we need carbs and we need sugar to do anything extreme. And so I trained for 4 months to do a ride in Vermont. And it's a ride that they do every year. And it's over 200 miles and it's over 14,000 feet in elevation. And I did it. I actually broke it up into days because I knew the pace. I just picked up road cycling and I knew the pace that I couldn't hold it and get it done before dark. And they wanted you off the road before dark. So I broke it up into 2 days. So I did century days back to back. I did 100 miles the first day, 100 miles the next. And I kid you not, I woke up the next morning after the first day, after 120 some odd miles the first day. And my husband goes, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Great. I don't even have a muscle soreness." And he's like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so I got back on the bike. I did another 120 some odd miles. And after that, all I had was tightness in my Achilles tendons. I came home after that ride, stretched, and then the next day I had no problem. I had a problem keeping myself low key for a couple of days because I felt so good. And I knew I had to recoup because when I did this ride, I didn't eat a whole lot. I forced myself to eat before I went on my first day. I literally choked my food down. I normally don't eat that early. I do a lot of fasting. And I figured, well, if I'm going to do this much elevation and I'm going to do these many miles, I should probably eat something. I tried that. Not a good idea. Just sat heavy in my stomach. And so the next morning I said, you know what, I'm not going to eat. I'm just going to go and I'll eat when I'm hungry because that's usually how I work. So I did that. And I started at 6 in the morning and I did not eat that second day until about 3 in the afternoon. So I did that many miles on a fasted system and didn't have any pain. I didn't bonk. So I feel that there's that, as we all know, because we don't eat carbs, but there's that thing out there but I have to have carbs. I have to have carbs. And that was pretty extreme what I did. And I didn't eat carbs. So it helps with that performance as well. The longer endurance that I do, it seems to be even better than before when I was actually having, like sweet potatoes and what have you. So even just switching over to all meat in that aspect has helped me in that kind of a performance, not just strength.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. There's a fellow recently, I think Mike McKnight is the name, I believe, just got done running a 100-mile race on nothing.
Yes.
Basically, he's a carnivore
Yes.
guy, and I think it was 18 hours, which is, I mean, it's quite amazing, quite honestly. I mean, it's not Zach Bitter's pace, but I mean, it's still tremendously uh, impressive to run 100 miles in 18 hours with no carbohydrate whatsoever, and I think,
Absolutely.
we're seeing more and more people that are demonstrating this all the time. So clearly you don't need them. And I certainly never begrudge somebody for using it if it helps them. But I mean, I think there's a bit of paradigm shift, and we're seeing for different sports. We've got Super Bowl champions now doing a carnivore diet. We've got top level rugby players from all over the world, MMA fighters, jiu-jitsu athletes. So all kinds of people from different ilks, weightlifters, power lifters doing this and doing well. So it's really neat to see. Will that ultimately result in the best performance possible? I think it's too early to tell. Talk to me about, because this is always a common theme that people talk about in this space. Protein, fat. Are you more of the high fat approach? Are you more of the low protein, or because there's low protein, and then there's maybe protein for muscle building, which is maybe a little higher than other people. And I think it depends on where you're at. So where are you at with regard to that stuff?
I'm a big believer in intuitive eating. So I go with what my body needs that day. And I know what a protein hunger feels like, and I know what an electrolyte hunger feels like. And I know what a fat hunger feels like. And for me, fat is more of a depletion in energy. So when my energy's low, I know I need more fat. Like today, I ate I ate like a 12-ounce steak, which is a lot. I ate a 12-ounce steak after I worked out, and I was up for a while, and I had that, and I was like, wow, that's the most I've eaten ever since I started this. But usually I'll have a steak and I'll have like 3 or 4 eggs with it, or I'll have like some sardines, or kind of mix it up just a little bit. But for the most part, I don't count any of that stuff, and I don't pay attention to the amount of protein I'm having. If I feel satiated, then I know I'm getting enough. If I'm still hungry, I know I need more protein. My body needs more protein. And I notice on the days that I do like long bike rides, I'm not hungry that day, but the next day I'm famished. And I usually eat, between 3 and 4 meals. Normally I'll only have 1 or 2. But when I do an extreme activity like that the next day, it definitely wants more fat and more protein. So I just kind of listen to what my body tells me. I help people figure that out too. I'm not opposed to people having like numbers for each of those macros. But I'm just a believer in just listening to what my body needs instead of doing it that way.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you because, obviously someone who is, I guess, still in the nutrition space and coaching people. And how often are you employing a carnivore approach for your particular clients?
A lot these days. And the reason being, a lot of people that I work with are people that have tried everything else and just nothing is working. So they come to me as the last hope. And also a lot of them have, like Crohn's, and a lot of them have cancer. A lot of them have these diseases that are not supposed to be curable. So they end up coming to me saying, okay, I'm ready to try anything. So I've been doing it a lot lately. These past, I want to say 4 months in particular are the ones because they see that I'm doing carnivore. And I think that's just something that kind of gets them to come on over to try it. But I do have some people that have had autoimmune issues that we've tried to incorporate more meat and less vegetables, and they still have issues. And that's when I say, okay, let's just totally cut out the vegetables and, let's kind of do away with those. I know it's still kind of taboo with people, or it's a touchy subject when you tell them no vegetables, and some people are just not ready to go there. So I think how I like to do is I increase the meat, and they see what that is doing for their body and how much healthier and how much better they feel. But there's still this underlying issue that's still there. They're more apt to just go carnivore. And so I help them do that. And I think that's great that they are more open to that these days. Because I remember when even a year ago, it was kind of controversial, like really, really controversial. And I can't imagine when you started how controversial it must have been. So, I still have to kind of be very cognizant of that and sympathetic to that with some people.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very controversial. Let's put that out there. I mean, it's getting less so in the low carb space because, you know, the low carb people have already kind of sort of separated themselves from the fat is bad sort of mantra. And while I think the average person who listens to most of the sort of the mainstream stuff is just still getting that message. If fat is bad, you know,
Yeah.
low fat stuff, you know, the keto diet has done a lot for sort of converting a number of people. So there's definitely people in there, and there's obviously people that, you know, push back on that, you know, because I think one of the problems is you get people that will try to misinterpret that, saying that a ketogenic diet is the only way you can lose weight, which is clearly not true. I mean, there's a lot of ways to lose weight, but I'm not really interested in weight loss. I mean, it happens a lot, but that's not really what I'm passionate about. I'm really more interested in the health aspects, because we have people that are quite frankly underweight that, you know, regain their health on this diet, and they have to gain weight. And, you know, it doesn't mean that, you know, being thin is necessarily always healthy either. So there's different things that come into this. But so what are the results you're seeing with these people that do this? Are you seeing fairly good results with Crohn's and cancer? And what kind of results?
Yeah.
What kind of results are you seeing?
Yeah, so we've had some stage 4 cancer patients that no longer have it. I've seen some Crohn's people that now have come off their medications. They've been on it for 3 months now, and they've come off their medications. Some of the big ones are the depression. I see a lot of young kids I say kids, they're in their 20s, coming in and having major depression and social anxiety, or anxiety in particular. And that stuff is falling by the wayside. There's one that really speaks to me that held near and dear to my heart. Was this one woman who came to me with osteoporosis, and she has just finished her 6-month stint with me, and she no longer has osteoporosis. She was a vegetarian all her life, and she's in her 60s, and then now she opened up to doing carnivore, which was I didn't even play around with her with doing vegetables. I said, we need to do this. And we started doing some weight bearing exercises with her, and her bone density test comes back and she doesn't have it anymore. The doctors they were flabbergasted, but they never asked what she was doing. They never wanted to figure out what it was that reversed it. You know, that kind of angers me. But that one speaks near and dear to my heart, because that was a very emotional one. And her husband had Parkinson's, or has Parkinson's. And since then, she has been feeding him the same way, and it slowed down the progression of the Parkinson's for her. And she was just so emotional when it came to that. And she was telling me that. So, you know, those are the ones that stick out the most. My daughter in particular, she was the first one I put on, and she doesn't mind me talking about her, but she's now 30. And it was a year ago I put her on it, just a little over a year ago. She had major depression and major anxiety, and she was really overweight. And she's still on her journey, but she has lost over 85 pounds. She's come off all her medications. So that one was near and dear to my heart too. It was my daughter, and it was a struggle to watch her, you know, deal with depression since she was a teenager. And so those things, it means a lot. I get emotional when I talk about that, because it's just, I see like what our kids are going through. And then when you add what's going on in our society right now, there's going to be more anxiety and more depression amongst, you know, that age. So, you know, I think that as far as the people that I work with, it seems that everybody's getting results with going more meat or all meat. And a lot of it is definitely the depression, definitely the anxiety going away. The side effect from all of that is weight loss. I'm with you. I'm all about being more healthy, not focusing on the weight. And if we can get them to feel good and heal on the inside, then they'll shed the weight too. And that's just a side effect. So that's we don't focus on that here for those types of people. We just focus on healing them. So yeah, it's interesting, the cancer aspect of it too, you know, because everybody, like you said, everyone thinks that meat causes cancer, and here we are, stage 4 cancer patients eating all meat, and the cancer goes away.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Kate, you said a couple of things that are very provocative, and one of the most shocking things to me is that you said you have a 30-year-old daughter, which means you would have had her at age 5, because you don't look like you're more than about 35, you know? So I'm just kind of like, wow, that's pretty impressive. You know,
I was
no, but I'm
14 when I had her.
yeah, no, I'm saying
Yeah,
you look great though. I mean, you
thank
look
you.
wonderful.
Appreciate it.
I mean, you know,
Thank you.
but I mean, like, yeah, I mean, the stage 4 cancer stuff. And again, uh, I'm not making medical claims about sort of stuff like, but that's really interesting. And I'd like to maybe you could share a little bit more about that without getting into, you know, personal privacy data. But can you give us the examples that you've seen? Because this is stuff that, you know, even if it's anecdotal, it it's interesting. And, you know, like I know there's people out there that are looking into this more in-depth research wise, but can you describe the stage 4 stuff?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Some, I want to say three, maybe it's two, but three. I want to say three. There's three people that came to me that has had a reoccurrence, and that's why they ended up coming to me, because they didn't want to go through the chemotherapy and all of that all over again. So they wanted to do it through diet, because it's just what they went through prior was just not fun for them, nor was it fun for the family and what they had to experience as well. So it's not just them, it's everybody else around them that goes through that too. And one of the things that, one of the ones that stick out the most is they couldn't eat. So they had to start with bone broth. You know, a lot of it was through IV. And so we gave her a lot of bone broth. She did it that way. She was able to drink it. And then she started getting some more energy and started to feel good. So we started having her do, you know, like the organ meats and stuff like that, in ground up inside her bone broth. And she loved that. And then it progressed over, you know, 4 to 6 months where she started eating this meat. So she actually started with ground beef first because she couldn't really chew. She didn't have the energy to. And now she's eating all of her like regular meat, you know, like big steaks, and she's loving it. She gets so excited when someone brings her food. So she's definitely still healing. So that one, she hasn't totally been cleared yet, but she's on her way to that. But the other handful that I've worked with, which was really amazing, you know, one had pancreatic cancer, one had breast cancer, another one had melanoma, and it had metastasized through her body. And it was just one thing after, and this one woman had surgery actually to remove a mole, and it actually spread the cancer through her body. So that was another one. All of these women, it was amazing to see the difference in how they were all at different stages of that stage 4. Some were early, caught on real early, and some were further along. And so to see the progression, even with the further along, because they stuck with it, they were able to see results. And, you know, for someone who's not a physician, me, to be able to work closely and have faith in what I do and be confident about it, I think really helped the family too, to stick with it. You know, I said it took some time to get here. It's going to take some time to heal. Stuck with it, and she did heal. And she's still healing, which I think is amazing. So these different types of cancer, you know, especially the melanoma one, I've had a lot of work with over the years with people. And I haven't seen as much recovery as I have with carnivore. And because a lot of the times, especially being a vegan, vegetarian, I was pushing more vegetables for a lot of those people and doing the Gerson's therapy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that was more juicing. And so they saw some results, but it wasn't, you know, a full-on heal like I have seen with the carnivore. So to me now, when people come to me, it's carnivore that they go to when they have stage 4 cancer. That's what I put them on.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And like I said, it's hard to argue with results. Again, does this apply? Now, were these people also concurrently doing radiation chemotherapy and the traditional stuff? Is this an adjuvant, or is this a standalone therapy?
No, some of them came to me that didn't have any of that, but some of them had a reoccurrence after the chemotherapy and radiation. It was their second bout of cancer, and then they didn't want that. So just because of how they felt beforehand. So those people just jumped right into the nutrition. The newly diagnosed ones, it took a little bit of coercing to do it through just nutrition and not, because they didn't want to, but the family wanted them to do the radiation and the chemo, and they couldn't get their families to understand. So I wasn't working with just them. I was also working with their families to get them to understand the nutritional aspect of it and why, give them a chance to heal through the nutrition. So there was a little bit of a mix there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably familiar with the work of people like Thomas Seyfried out of yeah, and so he's sort of, when you talk about the sort of the iatrogenic spread of melanoma by going getting a mole biopsy. I mean, those are the types of things that make him pull his hair out, and the way we sort of cut into everything and potentially seed all the other tissues and the lymphatics and stuff like that with the surgical type stuff. And it's kind of, maybe that's not the first, because biopsy has usually been the mantra. Biopsy it, figure out what it is, and then throw the sort of different chemicals. And I've seen people that are doing concurrently chemotherapy, radiation on a carnivore diet, and even though that's going on, they'll say that they don't really have the degree of side effects that many people often report. They don't have the vomiting, they don't have the hair loss to the degree, they don't have just the generalized lethargy and malaise that they do. So even if you decide to do the traditional route as an adjuvant, it seems to work. It seems to work pretty well. Are you, when you're dealing with like cancer patients, and I know there's a group, many people are aware of the Paleomedicine group, Chabot Toth. I just had an email from him inviting me to speak at some conference. Unfortunately, it's a virtual conference, because we're all doing virtual stuff right now. But anyway, they have they also deal with people in late stages of cancer, and they try to do it purely nutritionally, and they have a set protocol. It tends to be a very high-fat carnivore version. It tends to be a relatively low caloric version, and it tends to include organ meats, and I think they're very strict about that. And I think, I know when I talked to Thomas Seyfried, he said, compliance was a bit of a challenge, to get people to stick to it, because that's the hardest thing. So what do you see when you're dealing with somebody has cancer, are you doing a similar approach, high fat? And then how do you help with compliance?
Yeah, I do approach it with higher fat, absolutely. But I also approach it with fasting. I'm a big believer in doing, like the 36-hour fasting, a couple times a month. There's studies out there that show that you can produce stem cells. And what better way to do that with these cancer patients, especially with what they're going through or what they've been through, to produce more stem cell. So I like to get them to do some fasting as well. The compliance, it is hard to do it, but I think a lot of the times too is I don't sugarcoat anything for them, and I tell them how it is. And I say, listen, this is what's going to get you healthy. If you want to get healthy, if you're tired or feeling sick, if you don't want to go through this, and you don't want to prolong, the pain, then you got to be compliant. And I find that carnivore really helps with that, because you're eliminating a lot of the other stuff that causes you to crave other things. So we're taking out all that other, I always feel like if we have a little bit of something like, I don't know, maybe even berries or what have you, I feel that still brings on intense cravings of other things and wanting you to have more. I see it as a catalyst for that. So I just say, you know what, if we eliminate a lot of that other stuff out of there, you're not going to want to have the ice cream or the chocolate bar or anything like that. You're just going to stick to the meat. And it doesn't mean you're going to be this way forever. Let's just get you to heal. And then we'll move from there. We'll reassess and see what we can do from there. If we need to add anything else back in, chances are they're not going to. Like I said, some of them it's pretty early on that I've been working with these guys these last 6 months. It'd be interesting to see if they do add anything else in. The ones that I've put on carnivore have stayed on carnivore. They haven't wanted to go anywhere because they feel so good. They just want to stay there. So the compliance piece is really just telling them how it is. And if it comes from a place of love, they know that it comes from a place of love and that I'm not being that mean. They call me the food Nazi for a reason. I always say that's not good. That's not K8 approved. You shouldn't be eating that. I don't sugarcoat anything for them because it's not going to do them any good if I do. They need to know the facts.
Yeah, I think now I'll go back to an earlier comment where you mentioned, you'd done, sort of plant-based vegetarian, vegan diets or work with people with that. And you saw kind of the results were, kind of mediocre, and I think, and I do think, if you cut out the junk food, you're definitely going to see an improvement. I think where a meat-based approach, not only does it cut out the junk food, particularly on a carnivore diet, it's really tough to have, kind of, even with keto, there's these keto treats and snacks and products that
Exactly.
they're kind of garbagey, but with meat, it's just kind of like, there's not much room for junk, right? So,
Right.
but we had Dr. Tony Hampton on the other day, and he basically said, look, I've been practicing for a couple decades, and most of that time I would put people, I believe the low fat, the plant-based mantra, I'd push that on my patients. And I almost never saw anybody quit medications. I mean, almost never. But as soon as I went low carb, higher fat, more animal based, I started seeing every week lots and lots of people giving up medications. So I think it's so much more of a powerful intervention. And, it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about trying to get this as a clinically validated method, trying to get these clinical trials, done, funded and done. And that's one of the big pushes we're doing right now, so that more, because what you're doing right now, I mean, many people would say, well, that's quackery, that's dangerous, that's rogue, how dare she, and it's tough, it's challenging. And do you ever feel that you're worried that you put yourself in kind of a compromised position for doing things that's outside of the kind of the approved methods?
I did for a while. My husband's a chiropractor, so we deal with the quackery stuff often. So I basically learned from him. I wholeheartedly believe that we can create our own health through nutrition. And if they want to say that I'm a quack, that's great. I think that if that's the case, then I'm really stirring the pot and I'm doing something right. That's why I love it when the vegans attack you, because you're doing something right. Because when you stir the pot like that, you've hit something very important. So yeah, I don't worry about it anymore. The reason why I never went to go get my certification to be a nutritionist was for that reason. So that way I can't be sued for that stuff. So that's how I covered my own butt. I just called myself a nutrition coach. I have all of the education for it, but I refuse to be called a dietitian or a nutritionist for that reason. Because if for some reason they come after me, a doctor's office saw what I was doing with their patient and they came after me, they could sue me. And so this way they can't. They have no way to, they have no premises to do that now. So I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some thoughts that some of the nutrition groups will try to make it illegal to give dietary advice.
Yep, they try.
And I put it like this: I mean, your mother tells you what to eat. I mean, are you going to tell your mother? Your mother can't tell their child what to eat anymore, and I guess the caveat would be, if you're getting paid for it, then they may try to regulate that. And I think there's pushes for that, certainly, because and the sad thing is, I saw, I mean, this is and realizing it's 2020, and I'm really shocked by this. There was an article written, no doubt, by a kind of a mainstream nutritionist saying the best foods for diabetics to control blood sugar. And on the cover was a big old bowl of oatmeal with a bunch of fruit added into it. And I'm like, don't these people even have access to a way to measure blood sugar? Because, any diabetic that eats that's going to see their blood sugar shoot up for, one, significantly high, and it's going to usually stay up for a very long period of time. And so it's like, you could just replace that dietitian with a continuous glucose monitor. And,
Yeah.
I mean, you would probably be far more healthy, particularly when you're dealing with diabetics. In fact, is that something you deal with? Do you see a lot of diabetics?
I do see a lot of diabetics. I see a lot of type 1 and type 2. I love the type 1s because they've been on insulin pretty much all their life. And they tell me that this is the least amount of insulin they've ever had to take. They've had to come off their insulin pumps. They have to now do it themselves because they don't need as much, which I think is pretty cool. Type 2, they're a little harder because they're so addicted to the sugar and the carbs. It's a little harder for them to come off that stuff. I find that for them, the compliance there is harder to get them to be compliant for the type 2 diabetes. The pre-diabetics, they're kind of a mix of people. What I find is if they have a family history of it and they've seen their family member suffer from it, they're more apt to be compliant versus someone who is just on their own with that and hasn't seen a family member go through something like that. But yeah, type 2 diabetic is on the rise. I had a 4-year-old that had it that I worked with. So that 4-year-old, it was tough, you know, because I was dealing with the parents, not the 4-year-old. And the parents just saw it easier to give in to his fits and giving him whatever he wanted. And so that, unfortunately, that didn't work for that 4-year-old, because the parents would much rather not deal with the fits that he would throw because he was having withdrawals. That was sad, you know, that they couldn't see his health as being more important. But yeah, diabetics, you know, it's huge. And I think a lot of them go around, when I look at their blood work, I'm not a physician, so I can't say, but there's a lot of them that are pre-diabetic, that are not even diagnosed as pre-diabetic. And so I treat them like they are. So I can't tell them that they are, and I can't say that. I can't do a diagnosis that way, but they definitely are. And it's amazing how much comes through my practice that is not diagnosed.
Yeah, that's probably for every diabetic out there, there's probably 10 that are undiagnosed right now. And we think so, I think I can't remember the latest. I think we're somewhere between 7 and 9% of our country is diabetic, is outright diabetic, which is pretty high. The comment about the 4-year-old, I think the youngest age of a type 2 diabetic is 2, which is just, I mean, it's just utterly shocking that, you know, this used to be called adult onset diabetes, or, you know, but, you know, when you're getting it in 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, it's crazy. But the comment I have is, you know, if a toddler is dictating the nutritional policy in your household, there is some serious problems there. I mean,
Absolutely.
that kid's going to
Amen.
yell and scream for that. You know, I saw this with my niece, you know, God bless her, and my sister. And, you know, I kind of went in there, and she was 9, I think, and was, you know, just eating kind of garbagey, and you could tell moody, irritable, you know, quite honestly, just not a pleasant kid to be around. And I said, look what you're feeding this kid. And she agreed. And we literally, you know, I was there visiting over the holidays, and I said, look, we're just going to take all this junk food out and get rid of it. And as we were bringing out in a big old garbage bag, I saw the girl, you know, my niece was watching, and she literally laid on the ground, threw a fit like a 2-year-old, screaming, you know. And we went to the store, and we were buying, you know, just healthier food, and some of it was, you know, some of it was fruits and vegetables, and some of it was, you know, a lot of you know, meats and those types of things. But just doing that, I mean, it's just amazing. But I mean, gosh, if you can't stand up to a 4-year-old, you know, it's, you know, and this is one of the things, and I'm not going to have to criticize anybody's parenting, but I'm 54, I'm 53, I'm almost 54. My girlfriend is 54. We're in the process of adopting another child. I've already had 4 I've raised, and we're just going to be the 5th one.
Congratulations.
And the hoops you have to jump through in order to adopt a child, I mean, it's just incredible. You know, it's just all the things you have to show and demonstrate and prove, and you're fit parents. And if the average person had to do that to have a child, there'd be no children. There'd be no children in the country, because it is hard. I mean, it's like, but I mean, some of that stuff is just, you know, and it's a obviously there's a lot of things going on. The food industry does not help at all. You know, it's convenient.
No.
Here you go. It's convenient food. And anyway, I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, speaking of a lot of that too, kids, I worked with a handful of autistic children too, that were on the different parts of the spectrum. And the one in particular, he was 21 years old, obviously still at home. He couldn't point, he couldn't talk, he could only make a sound like, that's all he could do. And to show his frustration, he would act out, and he would bite his lip so hard that he would bleed. We put him on Carnivore, and his mother sent me a video. She was crying. He picked up a toy and rolled it. He has now tactile, which he never had. Like, he would roll it. And then as the months went on, he started pushing. They have like these things that you can use to push, like go to the bathroom, or yes or no, that you can push to answer the questions that are being asked. He is now pushing those buttons. And his mother was crying. She was, I can't believe I was poisoning my kid this long. I was like, you can't think that way, because you didn't know. I mean, it's one thing if you know, but he has changed leaps and bounds, and he's 21. She said he's never done any of these his whole life, and just going carnivore was amazing. We did real high fat for him, is what we did. So I did like extreme keto for him, is what I call that. So we did really high fats for him. Totally different kid, totally different. and yeah, when I worked with those families, even some of the autistic kids were freaking out when we were cleaning out the cupboards, because the local ones, I'll go to their house and work with them, and the kids were screaming and freaking out, and I was like, they'll get over it, they'll be okay. The parents need the more of the support just to help them get through those crazy times, and it only takes a couple weeks, and then they're normal again.
Yeah, the fact that they're 21, you can't attribute that to normal development, because a lot of people will say, well, would have happened because of normal development. So once you've kind of, you reach 21, I mean, you're pretty much done growing, at least from a brain standpoint. There's some arguments that your brain grows to 25, but I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. And it's kind of interesting. There's a group called the Autistic Carnivore. A buddy of mine named Thomas Clark runs that, and they've got several hundred people, and they're mostly all adults or sometimes parents of autistic children, and they're generally saying very good things. And now it's not like it's curing autism, but what they're saying is the perseverations, the emotional ability, the ability to function dramatically is improving for many of those people. And so this is, again, another just thing. And there have been some ketogenic studies on autistic children, a few out there. And so this is, like I said, this, again, I just see this as such a powerful tool that, gosh, we should be studying the heck out of this. And I just, I'm kind of giddy thinking that we're going to get a study done, and hopefully that will lead into more studies, because I think there's so many people that could benefit. And I just see so many people out there suffering unnecessarily because we have this largely, in my view, a profit-driven desire to demonize meat and to put forward the cereals and the cheap stuff that they can easily profitize, because they're so, they're just highly profitable. And then even the future foods, the food is software, the 3D printed food, the lab grown stuff. I mean, it's all designed for profit. Anybody that sort of falls for the I call it virtue signaling, environmental, ethical. I mean, it's none of that. It's all about profit. And so hopefully we can all stand up and support each other, support the people that need to do this, and that, help produce our food and those types of things.
I think it's great what you're doing, because here in the Northeast, I'm in New Hampshire, for those of you that don't know that, and it's very odd up here to see people. I mean, some people are just starting keto up here. Some people haven't even heard of it, which is kind of odd to me. So it's very rare when, we go out to eat as a family, and my daughter's carnivore, her husband is as well. My husband eats, mostly he eats carnivore-ish. His kids don't, but we all eat a lot more meat than most families. And, when my daughter, her husband and I ask for just the burger, nothing else, no vegetables, no lettuce, none of that. And they look at us like we have three heads. Oh, they ask, are you keto? Are you this? And I was like, I always answer, yes, we're extreme keto. Because if you go into that carnivore thing, it's just a huge, story you have to tell them. But I think that it's great that, you have these kind of communities, and that you guys are able to talk with each other and support each other, because I think that's where the healing happens. That's where we're able to continue to move forward, is when we have that support and that group community. So I really am very proud that you do this, Dr. Baker. This is awesome for these people.
Yeah. And I think, and I do this all the time, but I thank the members of the community, because it's peer support. It is, it is coaching. It is, as we add physician support to this community, which we're in the process of doing. This is part of it. I mean, like I said, I made a little kind of almost kind of a tongue-in-cheek meme about what's the best supplement to this diet. And the supplement is really support. I mean, it's like, maybe you don't need some magic vitamin or, magic, extract of, chicken brain or something like that. But you need, I think support has the biggest thing. And, when we study this, and it's not surprising. I mean, like I said, there's lots and lots of data out there showing that, for whatever health intervention, if you don't have a good support system, whether it's an internal system in your home or physicians or some sort of community, the results are just not as good. And that is the one thing that we are striving to do is obviously, I think we have a nutritionally superior message, but I think that the support aspect is so important. And, like I said, this is where I think the the real growth happens. And, you know, some
Awesome.
people come and go, but I think most people that are here find it to be very helpful. So,
That's great.
I want to give you a few more minutes just to maybe let people know anything else you want to share, and then maybe where to find you. I have to go do another. I've got like so many meetings. I've got like 6 meetings today, so I've got to run to a meeting here shortly. So, can you
Okay.
anything else you want to share, and then where to find you?
Yeah. So I just want to say, really go listen intuitively to what your body is telling you. And, it's telling you something for a reason. And, I strongly believe carnivore is that answer for a lot of people. I know there's some people out there that still eat vegetables, and that's okay. And if you're still getting, some symptoms from that, then we need to start thinking about pulling that stuff out. So I think it's amazing that we have this support group. So stick with the support. And Dr. Sean is right. Support is the supplement. And I think that is going to be huge for a lot of it. Not always an easy road, but if you persevere and you just keep at it, then you will see the results and you will get them. So just stick with it. Just know your why, I guess is the best takeaway from that. Just know your why and stick with it. The best place to find me is my website is K8 for Wellness. That's the letter K, the number 8, the number 4, wellness.com. And I'm on all social media that way as well, on Instagram and on Facebook. And I also have a podcast. It's been on hold for the past couple months. I'm changing the platform, hopefully switching over to YouTube. So Dr. Sean Baker was on my podcast. So if you want to hear him on mine, you can go over there and check him out. And that is called the K8 for Wellness podcast as well. So I appreciate all of you guys and all your time and spending some time with me and listening to my story. And today, I don't know if you caught that, but today is my 1-year anniversary being carnivore. So I'm so excited to share it with all of you. So thank you.
Well, congrats on the 1 year. Made it through. That's a wonderful sort of milestone, and
Yes.
many more years hopefully to come. Just
Absolutely.
continue doing what works for you. I think that's the best advice I can give everybody. Like I said, I really tell people to do what works for you. The goal is health, and that's what we really want to focus on. So thanks,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you tomorrow. We have another special guest tomorrow. So I will be talking to you guys later. You guys have a great day and take care now.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again.